Defensive Player of the Year in the NBA. Definitely a few bigger names. I don't think everyone's going to agree on this. The other two topics were a little more, most people agree, but this one, there's a few names that are kind of at the top. Nolan, who do you have as Defensive Player of the Year?
So my Defensive Player of the Year, I'd say this is definitely closer than the other two categories, and there's a lot of guys you could probably make good arguments for. My guy is going to be the Frenchman, Gobert. I think what he's been doing on the defensive side of the ball, being the anchor for that Jazz team, cannot be understated in the fact that they have the best record in the entire league. And I think the biggest hate with Gobert is he definitely got caught a couple of times with the ISO ball that we were talking earlier, looking like a fool. It's happened a couple of times, but we could also see, in my little rationale against that, is we see other players have been caught in that. I've seen one of my favorite defenders of all time is Chris Paul, CP3, and he's been caught in the mixer with Steph Curry. So when you get elite ball handlers, people are going to be caught in the mixer. It's going to happen sometimes, and maybe we can link this video in the description or something like that. But the video I was talking about earlier, it broke down every single Rudy Gobert ISO ball possession. There's been 31 this year, and it broke down the stats around that. And he had it, regardless of the guy even scored, he had a 31% block percentage. He blocked 9 out of 31 attempts. I think that's pretty legit. So Gobert is my Defensive Player of the Year, and then that is my rationale against him guarding guards.
Vish, who do you got?
Yeah, so I got Ben Simmons, but I don't. First of all, I do think Gobert is going to end up winning the award, which is his third Defensive Player of the Year, and I think he's deserving. I think it goes beyond just the incredible blocks per game, and Nolan talked about how he's not actually as bad as people seem to perceive he is in terms of switching out onto guards. I mean, if you watch a Utah Jazz game and you know what you're watching, it's really hard to miss the impact of how many times players pass up what are seemingly open layups because the presence of Rudy Gobert makes them not want to put up the shot. He's become slightly better on the offensive end, but obviously this is a defensive conversation. He's unbelievable. But to me, it's Ben Simmons all the way. And the reason I have Ben Simmons, even though all defensive metrics favor Rudy Gobert, and I would say the eye test probably has them right there neck and neck, is because in the modern NBA, I'm just taking the elite perimeter defender over the elite big man. No disrespect to Gobert, but Ben Simmons' versatility to me on the defensive end changes things for the Philadelphia 76ers. The fact that no matter what, if they play Boston in the first round, he can guard Jason Tatum. If they play Milwaukee in the second round, he can guard Giannis. If they play the Nets in the Eastern Conference Finals, he can guard KD, he can guard Kyrie, he can guard Harden. And I think that level of versatility makes him unique. I mean, he has the strength to guard a Giannis. He's quick enough to guard a Kyrie or a Bradley Beal or a player like that. And then he's long enough to contest a guy like, again, Giannis or KD. And I think that combination is unique. I think he's the best defensive player in the NBA. No disrespect to Gobert, who's obviously right there. And Gobert, when it's all said and done, the rate he's going, he might be in the conversation for the best 4 or 5 defensive players in the history of basketball. That's how good Gobert has been the last 4 or 5 years. But I'm going to go with Ben Simmons. I think it's time he gets his respect. I actually thought Ben Simmons was the best defensive player in basketball last year when Philly was maybe not as good. And, Giannis ended up winning. And Anthony Davis, obviously, was incredible too. But I think this is the year Ben Simmons deserves his props. And again, it just goes back to the fact that I prefer that elite perimeter defender over the elite big man defender.
Yeah, so I want to say both of these guys are in my top 2, but the third guy I want to throw in there was Draymond Green, who I think needs to get talked about more. I want to say he's won it in the past, or he's been in that.
He's won it once.
Yeah, he has won. Okay. And he's been in the conversation, him and Rudy going back and forth. With him, team defense, like no matter who's out there, I feel like the Warriors defense is good, and he's the main reason for that. And then Nolan, Rudy Gobert, obviously, like interior defense is the best in the league. No complaints here. The guard stat you mentioned was interesting because one of my gripes about him was I feel like every time the Rockets would play the Jazz, James Harden would kind of take his lunch money and he would just kill him in the pick and roll. But obviously it's a regular season award, so that doesn't matter. But here's my thing and why I think it's Ben Simmons. And I think Vish mentioned it, but I wanted to expand a little bit. But he can guard 1 to 5, and he's an elite perimeter defender. But I'd also argue saying he's elite in the post too. I mean, if he was on a 5, it wouldn't be the most ideal, and I sure wouldn't want him to go against someone like Jokic every play, but he could hold his own against pretty much any 5 in the league. And then 1 through 4, I'd say he's locking down or at least keeping in check any of those guys. And when you do get to the playoffs, the league's going to be run by teams that have the best wings: Clippers, Lakers, Nets. I mean, they have good everything, but anyways. And then the Bucks, Celtics were mentioned as well. So the fact that Ben Simmons can guard any of the best guy on any team really well is why I like him a lot. And I did want to say that one of the games against the Mavericks, he actually kind of put the clamps down on Luka Doncic. So shout out to him for that. And not many people have been able to do that. So I got Ben Simmons as my guy. I think this is going to be really close, though. I feel like the Defense Player of the Year is always, usually pretty close. Or there's a couple guys that are in there consistently.
Because I think the thing with the Defensive Player of the Year is that it's all eye test. And like everybody only watches their favorite guy because it's really hard to watch all the NBA games. Because like you can bring up defensive metrics, but they're so inaccurate, especially given today's NBA. If you play on a good team defense, you're going to have good defensive metrics. Now, that doesn't mean you're a good defensive player, but like if you played the OKC Thunder in 2016 and you got to guard Andre Roberson, I'm sure your defensive metrics were elite. That's kind of the problem with defensive metrics at times. But I did want to touch on one thing. I love how you mentioned Draymond, and I think Draymond deserves a lot more consideration for this award because you talked about the impact of just his presence. It's also just his smarts. I mean, the fact that they can actually play him as a small ball 5 and he competes his butt off and he contests shots really well at the rim without fouling. He's really incredible. I mean, Steph has gotten a ton of credit for the Warriors offense, and as he should. He's been on this incredible run, some of the best shooting maybe we've ever seen, and we've seen a lot of insane shooting from Steph. But what Draymond Green has done for their defense in terms of, I would argue that Draymond Green is what has made Andrew Wiggins play really good defense this year, and Kelly Oubre has played good defense this year because of Draymond Green. So I love that you mentioned him. He's probably not going to win it, but I think he 100% deserves to be right there in the conversation with Gobert and Ben Simmons. And then the other guy is Giannis, who won it last year, and he's not going to win any award this year because even though it's a regular season award, people are going to be talking about his playoff performances. But once again, Giannis has been incredible on the defensive end this year too.
Yeah, and I would just say it seems to be summed up with the two main guys being Gobert and Simmons is if you value versatility on defense or paint protection more. And I think whatever side you go to, you either go Simmons or Gobert because they are really close. But it would also be interesting seeing if they had like a stat similar to the Gobert on guards, Simmons on big men, to see if like you could actually crunch the numbers and see if he's really legit when he has swoosh on those. And one other thing I was curious about is because I too think Draymond Green is a very underrated defender, but do you think that goes into the fact that he is a very outspoken, confident individual that people don't want to give him that much credit because he already kind of takes it himself? Do you think that plays into it at all? Or do you think if he was a little bit more humble, he'd get more credit? How do you guys think about that? I was just thinking about that when you brought it up.
That's a great question, actually. I mean, on one hand, I would like to say that he would get more credit if he's humble, but like then we go NBA seasons without even talking about Kawhi Leonard. I mean, we just talked about Defensive Player of the Year, and once again, Kawhi Leonard he's definitely lost a step on defense. I think last year's playoffs showed it. He's not the Kawhi Leonard of 2014 or 2015 who looked like maybe the best defensive player we've ever seen. Like a Michael Jordan, Kobe Bryant, Scottie Pippen type perimeter defender. But he still should be near this conversation, and we don't talk about him because we forget. And then you talked about with Jokic with MVP. So I don't know how to answer that because I don't even know. I just feel like the NBA media kind of just plays favorites and they drive narratives on reasons. And the reason right now is that Steph is having this incredible year, and that's why the Warriors are succeeding, which is 85% true. And Draymond Green's shooting is so bad that people are just talking about that. But I feel like Draymond Green has had while Steph has been on this run, he's had 10 games in a row where he has 15 assists, 8 rebounds, 8 points, 2 blocks, 3 steals. And the impact he makes defensively, not just by himself, but improving and elevating the defensive players around him, I think that's what separates him because like Ben Simmons is an incredible individual defender. Ben Simmons doesn't make Matisse Thybulle an incredible defender. Matisse Thybulle is already an incredible defender. Joel Embiid is already an incredible defender. But Draymond Green takes less than parts on defense, and because of his communication and because of how smart he doubles and all of that, he makes them look a lot better. So I didn't answer your question properly. I don't know the answer to your question, but all I'm saying is that I don't know why the NBA media pushes the narratives that it does.
So I guess my thing to that question would be, I think him being outspoken has led to a lot of people calling him an overrated player due to the fact that like he cannot really score all that well. And yeah, that is true. Like people would give the example, if you threw him on the Hornets, how many extra games would they win because of having Draymond Green? And I do think it's a fair point in the fact that, like on the offensive end, he's an amazing passer, but like, playmaking as in scoring for his team, he doesn't really add much there. And I think that's led to a lot of people calling him like the most overrated superstar, or people calling him like a really, really good elite player. And I think that's led to him being more so underrated than anything, because you insert him on any team and he is instantly one of the best and most elite, I would say, role players. I don't even know if you'd call him a role player, but we haven't seen someone like him really, I guess is the point I'm trying to drive home. Like he's that type where him on the offense and scoring is like, bottom of the barrel, but everything else he does so elite.
Right.
He's not like Dennis Rodman in the sense of how they play, but their impact is like, Dennis Rodman could put up 2 points, but he could also have 20 boards and, play outstanding defense. And that's kind of like what he does, but in a different sense with like passing and stuff,
Yeah, I love that point, because it's like you can't put him on a bad team. And obviously, like we saw him on the bad team Warriors last year. People thought he was getting exposed, but no, that's not his game. That's not his skill set. But he does make a discernible impact on the court. Like their superstar is obviously Steph Curry. He's their main primary scorer, and he puts up 30 a night for them. But Draymond Green does a lot of little things, and like he's the perfect complementary piece for them. And like, okay, you can poo-poo what he would do in a better situation, but you just got to look at his value and what he adds right now. Like we've seen Steph Curry still put up great numbers when Draymond Green has been hurt at points this year, or Draymond Green didn't play, and the Warriors didn't play good basketball because they miss his playmaking. So like, it's kind of like Steph doesn't need anybody, but Draymond elevates him, and he obviously elevates Draymond in the offensive end. But I agree with you. Like, I don't understand just because you can't put him on if you put him on a bad team, he couldn't average 30. That means he's not a good player. He's incredible at what he does. It's just what he does is more impactful if he has a special scorer like Steph Curry, if he has a special shooter like Klay Thompson.
Yeah, one thing I would just add too before we jump off the topic is I think the communication point you brought up, Blake, is something that not enough people talk about, because you look at both the other guys, and Gobert and Simmons and all the other defenders like Kawhi too, and they're very, very good defenders, but they're not communicating, trying to help the team and making that much of an impact as Draymond does. They obviously still are having conversations in the huddle, having conversations in practice, but I don't see anyone honestly in the NBA who talks more on the court on defense in the game than Draymond Green. And I think that's a super cool aspect of his game, and it's not talked about enough.
And it just goes along with like who he is, and he's very outspoken, obviously, and can lead to some parts where, he berates refs and, borderline harasses them, which is not good. But, he's a very competitive person. And you can obviously tell the defensive impact that he makes. But not to get too off topic here.